What if you could turn any plugin into a mid-side processing plugin or a multi-band frequency plugin? Well, you can using the tool inside of Studio One called Splitter. Splitter is one of the most underrated and underused tools in Studio One, and there's 4 crazy things that you can do with Splitter. Yes, 4. There is another feature that you can use Splitter for that isn't listed inside of the Splitter plugin, and that is the ability to turn any plugin into a mid-side processing plugin. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video for that because it's a little bit complicated to set up, but I'll show you how to set it up, and I'll also give you a link that you can download the preset so you can just drag and drop it and then start loading plugins inside of it to make them mid-side. I'll make it super easy for you. So now the 4 different types of splitting. Let's start inside of Splitter and we'll go through each one of those one by one. I will make sure I put timestamps down in the description below so that way you can jump to the specific spot that you want to watch. But if you have the time, watch this video all the way through. It'll be short and it'll be super informational for you. I promise. So here inside Studio One, I have a track that sounds like this. Sake of this video, I really want to focus on the guitar solo. And so here we'll go to the guitar solo. You can see everything is rendered out in this solo. There's no plugins here whatsoever. So now I can just come to the plus icon and I can look up Splitter. And this is what Splitter looks like. You can arrange this window, make it bigger or smaller just by clicking over here in the corner. And then there's 3 different modes of splitting. And there is a 4th mode that you can set up, and I'll show you how to do that at the end of this video for mid-side processing. But for right now, I just want to talk about the different modes. So right now here we have normal mode, and for each one of these splits, which you can increase the number of splits up here to 3 or even 5 if you want to go crazy. And there's an option to mute each one of the splits. So it just mutes that split, and you can also adjust the volume of each split as well. Level 1 is over here. You can adjust the volume on this side too, like this. And number 2 is this side here. And if we go up to, let's say, 5 splits, it's the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. And now to the split modes, we have normal mode, which is very similar to a bus channel. So if you want to add parallel compression, you don't have to add compression to a bus. You could actually just add it right in Splitter. I'll be honest with you, I still add compression to a bus instead of using Splitter. It just makes way more sense for me when I'm inside the console and mixing, but I'll show you how to do it here. So signal comes in here, goes into Splitter, and for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna make the splitter yellow, and then it gets split into 2 separate sections. So I can add compression while still letting the normal signal flow through. So I'll click on Add Inserts, I'll click on Compression, and then I'll drag this down to below the splitter. Either side, it doesn't matter. For this one specifically, it's the normal mode, remember. It's essentially like adding a bus. So either side doesn't matter for this one. And then I can double click on the compressor to open it up. And so I'll just play this guitar solo real quick and add a ton of compression. And so now I'm adding some parallel compression to this guitar signal. So the normal guitar signal is coming through, which I can actually mute this section here. You can see where it kind of breaks off. That's exactly how that works. The mute button and that little break off is the exact same thing. So I can turn that off so you can hear just the normal guitar. Now bring the parallel compression in. Adds just a bit more beef to that. This would be super helpful for drums and things like that. Like I said, I still use a bus channel just so I can see it in my mixer, so I can actually turn a fader up and down. It's really the same thing, but you can leave it all right here inside of the inserts window. Now, this is not where it gets cool. Let's remove this plugin here. Now, there is a channel split and a frequency split. So over here, we'll go to the frequency split. I'm going to save the channel split for a little bit later because after the channel split, that's how we're going to use mid-side processing as well. So stick around for the video for that. Here inside of frequency split, we can actually split these plugins based on the frequency. So now let's say I want to add 3 different splits. And so now we have different crossover points here. And so now I can add different plugins to different parts. So let's say I want to add a compressor and I want to add a compressor to like the lows. I didn't track this guitar very well, and there's some flubby notes in there, and I want to get control over that, like palm muting and low flubby sounds. And I can adjust the crossover points here with this little slider and this little slider. Now we can get back to the splitter using this little button here, or you can just come over here and double click on the splitter plugin here. And so now I'm compressing those lows to kind of make sure that everything's sitting in the mix like it's supposed to. Now, let's say I want to add a little bit of delay to some of the higher frequencies. I can just add a delay, and then I could just drag that over here towards the higher frequencies. You can see that the delay is only added to the higher frequencies. I can adjust the crossover point using this slider here. So now this is becoming extremely useful. You can use any plugin whatsoever. It does not have to be Studio One plugins. You can use third-party plugins as well. So now let's go on to the channel split. Now what the channel split does is it splits the left channel from the right channel. So the left channel is channel number 1, and the right channel is channel number 2. So if I just mute the left channel, all you're going to hear is the right. And now if I just mute the right channel, all you're going to hear is the left. So now we can do some crazy stuff with this as well. Let's say I wanted to add a chorus just to the right side and not the left side, or I wanted to add some delay on the right side and then add some delay on the left side, but I wanted them to be at different times to almost act like a ping pong delay. I absolutely could. So I want to add just a bunch of room reverb to the right side of this, just for the sake of this video. So now it's only going on the right side. If you're not wearing headphones, make sure you're wearing headphones or turning your phone sideways, so that way you can use the stereo speakers in your phone. But seriously though, if you're watching music production tutorials on your phone without headphones, what are you doing? I'm just kidding. Or am I? So now I want to get into mid-side processing, and it takes a minute to set up, but once it's set up, it is so helpful. So there's a couple things you're going to need. First off, you're going to need Mix Tool, and there's an option here for MS Transform or Mid-Side Transform. You're going to want to click on that, and then you're going to want to add 3 dB of gain. That's because there's a lot of funky stuff that goes on with pan laws and things like that. Just ignore it. It doesn't matter. I'm talking to you, the person who's exactly like me and will waste an entire day just trying to figure this out instead of making great music. But unless you really want to know, it'll drive you crazy. If you don't, I'll leave a link down in the description for an article on all different kinds of stuff about pan laws and mid-side processing and how it works. But for most people, don't worry about it. Just know that you need to add the mid-side transform and then add 3 dB of gain. So now that we have mid-side transform selected, 3 dB of gain, the next plugin we want to add on the list is our splitter tool. And we want to set this to channel split. That's because the left will be mids and the right will be sides. That mix tool is taking our mix and it's putting the mids in the left channel and it's putting the sides in the right channel. Now to bring everything all back together, we want to add another instance of mix tool, do the MS transform, and remember we need 3 dB of gain per instance of any mid-side transform thing that's going on here. So that's literally what this is doing, is converting stereo to mids on the left and sides on the right. And so now that we have all of this set up, I can go into the splitter, and remember how I said now this, the left channel is the mids and the right channel is the sides? Well, let's test that. I'm going to mute the sides and make sure you're listening on a pair of stereo headphones or turning your phone sideways. So I've muted the sides and all I'm getting is the middle. Now let's mute the middle, so all we're getting is the sides. Pretty cool. So now that I know that left is mids and right is sides, and then it's bringing everything back with the mix tool. So the mix tool is splitting things from mid to side, so mids and sides, and then it gets all routed back to the mix tool. So everything from mid to side is going back into stereo. Now I can add plugins to either side. So right now I'm just going to label each mix tool as blue by right clicking this little bar down here. The splitter is going to be yellow, just so I can see things clearly. Now I'm going to add an insert. Now I want to add an EQ directly on the sides to kind of give it a bit of a boost in the high end without screwing up the mix too much. I can even actually take away some of those fundamental frequencies here to really clean up the sides. So I am only processing the sides on this. In fact, I can actually put a little bit of a low cut there too, so that way there's no super low end going on in the sides. Off and on. And now we can go back to our splitter here, and then on the mids, I can add some saturation if I want to. So let's use red light distortion. I can drag this directly onto this channel here. And let's add just a bit of saturation in the middle. Let's turn it to soft tube. Just gives it a little bit of beef. So one way you might actually use this is using an EQ and only throwing it on the sides of your entire mix, and then rolling off some of the low ends so you don't have any phase issues. A lot of people like to do that for a safe bass and things like that. I find that to be not necessary a lot of times, and it takes away some of the low end energy that you have, but it's something that a lot of people like to do, and it's super easy to do that with this. And remember, you can use any plugin whatsoever. You can add your favorite third-party plugin on the sides and on the mids by themselves using the splitter tool in Studio One. It's unbelievably useful. Now let me show you how you can actually set this up so you don't have to do it again and again and again. So I have a preset that you can download for free called mid-side processing. You just drag it into the session, and it sets up the mix tool for you. It sets up the splitter for you, and it sets up the mix tool again to put everything back to normal. And it's already got the 3 dB and everything else that you need. The link to that will be in the description below. You just type in your email address, it gets sent directly to your email, and then you just download this specific preset and drag it and drop it directly onto the track. And mid-side processing is set up for you already. Then remember, you just put sides on the right and mids on the left. Super easy, super fast. The link to that will be down in the description below. Now, mid-side processing isn't real. It's a very useful illusion, but it's actually not real. And if you want to know more about that, if you're a nerd like I am, then you're going to want to click on that video right there where I dive deep into what mid-side processing actually is, because there's only 2 speakers. How can there be a mid and a side if there's only a left and a right? So click on that video and I'll see you over there. Now, as always, go create.